1.
Good evening. I'd like to welcome you all tonight to our first Yule celebration here, which is pretty exciting, celebrating and enjoying the winter solstice. Tonight we will be broadcasted on YouTube, and we will have a ritual here in the sanctuary at UUFCC, United Unitarian Universalist. This is for Charlotte County. Oh my goodness, it's been a long day. I'm glad we're all here to celebrate together. After this, we'll go outside by the fire pit and continue our ritual and then have a feast afterwards. Thank you.
Blessed be and welcome. Today we honor and celebrate the holiday of Yule, the time where we all gather together despite our differences. Yule is a time where we get ready to prepare ourselves for the new year and the blessings to come.
Gods and goddesses, eldest children of the mother, the strongest, wisest, brightest, pick up a bowl of incense and feather. Hold high, O great ones, we honor thee with this sacred air. Accept this offering of sacred incense as our gift to thee. Deities, join our rite.
I ask that you now join me in a moment of silence as we meditate on the past year and the lessons we have learned, and as we meditate on the new comings and wondrous adventures that await us.
This evening we would like to share some history of Yule from different traditions around the world. And I would like to thank Sharon for finding all of this information from lots of sources. She tells me from her own books that she has, from the internet, from just stuff she knows. So thank you, Sharon. In ancient Rome, the winter solstice was welcomed with a joyous and unruly feast known as Saturnalia. By the 2nd century AD, they also celebrated the birth of the unconquered sun on December 25th, a custom that originated in Syria. Further north, Scandinavians celebrated Yule, a name which could mean wheel, or which possibly gives us the root for the word jolly. The exact nature of early Celtic celebrations are not known because in the 4th century AD, the Church of Rome overlaid the old festival of the birth of the sun, S-U-N, with the birth of the sun, S-O-N. The actual birthday of Christ had never been certain, so after much debate, the ancient midwinter feast was chosen because people were used to celebrating the birth of a sun god, S-U-N, hero at this time of year. Even then, the church fathers had to continually remind believers that they were supposed to be worshiping the birth of Christ, not the sun, S-U-N. For although this holiday now had a new name, many of the same customs were carried on as they had been for thousands of years, and for the same reason, to banish the dark and welcome back the light. In Ireland, the holidays lasted from Big Christmas on December 25 to Little Christmas on January 6. It was the most important festival of the year, a time to contemplate the special mystery of both human and divine love. People were more than usually devout and generous to others. It was commonly held that the gates of heaven were open at this time, and that anyone who died during the 12 days went straight to paradise. The midwinter feast usually lasted 12 days. Vikings decorated evergreen trees with gifts such as food, carvings, and food for the tree spirits to encourage them to return in the spring. Mistletoe, combined with a mother's tears, resurrected her son, the god of light and goodness in a Viking myth. The Celts believed mistletoe possessed healing powers as well, and could ward off evil spirits. In Norse tradition, Old Man Winter visited homes to join the festivities. The Viking god Odin was described as a wanderer with a long white beard and is considered the first Father Christmas. Viking children left their shoes out by the hearth on the eve of the winter solstice with sugar and hay for Odin's 8-legged horse, Sleipnir. Children traipsed from house to house with gifts of apples and oranges spiked with cloves and resting in baskets lined with evergreen boughs. The Yule log was a whole tree meant to be burned for 12 days in the hearth. The Celts believed the sun stood still during the winter solstice. They thought by keeping the Yule log burning for these 12 days encouraged the sun to move, making the days longer. The largest end would be fed into the hearth, wine poured over it. They lit it with the remains of the previous year's Yule log. Everyone took turns feeding the length of timber into the fire as it burned. Letting it burn out would bring bad luck. The Yule solstice foods include citrus fruits, oranges, lemons, limes, grapefruit, root vegetables, baked goods, roasted meat, nuts, dried fruit, stews, soups, pomegranates, gingerbread, cinnamon or berry breads, cookies, cakes, cranberries, apples.
Yule is attested early in the history of the Germanic peoples. In a Gothic language calendar of the 5th and 6th century, it appears in the month, name, and in the 8th century. An English historian wrote that the Anglo-Saxon calendar included the months corresponding to either modern December or December and January. The Saga of Hakone the Good credits King Hakone I of Norway, who ruled from 934 to 961, with the Christianization of Norway, as well as rescheduling Yule to coincide with the Christian celebrations held at the time. The saga says that when Hakone arrived in Norway, he was a confirmed Christian, but since the land was still altogether heathen and the people retained their pagan practices, Hakone hid his Christianity to receive the help of the great chieftains. In time, Hakone had a law passed establishing that Yule celebrations were to take place at the same time as the Christians celebrated Christmas. And at that time was to have ale for the celebration with a measure of grain, or else pay fines, and had to keep the holiday while the ale lasted. Yule had previously been celebrated for 3 nights. From midwinter night, according to the saga, Hakone planned that when he had solidly established himself and held power over the whole country, he would then have the gospel preached. According to the saga, the result was that his popularity caused many to allow themselves to be baptized. And some people stopped making sacrifices. Hakone spent most of this time in Trondheim. When Hakone believed that he wielded enough power, he requested a bishop and other priests in England, and they came to Norway. On their arrival, Hakone made it known that he would have the gospel preached in the whole country. The saga continues, describing the different reactions of various regional things. A description of pagan Yule practices is provided. It was ancient custom that when the sacrifice was to be made, all farmers were to come to the heathen temple and bring along with them the food they needed while the feast lasted. Kind of like we're doing today, bring along the food. At this feast, all were to take part of drinking of ale. Also, all kinds of livestock were killed in connection with it. Fires were to be lighted in the middle of the temple floor, and kettles hung over the fires. The sacrificial beaker was to be borne around the fire, and he who made the feast and was chieftain was to bless the beaker as well as all the sacrificial meat. The narrative continues. The toasts were to be drunk. The first toast was to be drunk to Odin, for victory and power to the king. The second to the gods, for good harvests, and for peace. And third, a beaker was to be drunk to the king himself. In addition, toasts were drunk to the memory of departed kinsfolks. These were called mini.
As forms of paganism can be quite different and have very different origins, these representations can vary considerably despite the shared name. Some celebrate in a way as close as possible to how they believe ancient Germanic pagans observed the tradition, while others observe the holiday with rituals assembled from different sources. In Germanic neo-pagan sects, Yule is celebrated with gatherings that often involve a meal and gift-giving. In most forms of Wicca, this holiday is celebrated at the winter solstice as the rebirth of the great horned hunter god, who is viewed as the newborn solstice sun. The method of gathering for this Sabbat varies by practitioner. Some have private ceremonies at home, while others do so with their covens. Burning a log in celebration of Yule started well before medieval times. It began as part of the winter solstice festivities. The candles and lights associated with Christmas, meant to symbolize guiding beacons for the Christ child, may have evolved from the Yule log, which was lit to entice the sun to return as part of the Yule festival in Scandinavia. Interestingly, the Yule log was originally an entire tree. Families would bring the trunk of the Yule tree inside and stick the big end of it into the fireplace. The Yule log would feed the fire through the 12 days of Christmas, from Christmas Day through the evening of the 5th of January, known as Twelfth Night. The ashes of Yule logs were said to be very good for plants. Wood ashes do indeed have beneficial uses in our gardens. At Samhain, we honor, celebrate, and welcome the descent into and return of the dark, the beginning of the new year, acknowledging that all beginnings emerge from darkness. At the winter solstice, we reach the depth of that darkness with the longest night of the year. Darkness has reached its peak. Now we start to wonder, will this continue? Will the earth grow darker and colder as the sun disappears into the south until only darkness is left? But at Yule, a wonderful thing happens. The sun stops its decline, and for a few days it rises in about the same place. This is the crucial time, the cusp between events. The sun stands still and everyone waits for the turning. In our heads we know the light will return, but in the darkness of winter can we be sure? Do our hearts believe what our heads tell us? Will the light keep its promises? We all have moments of darkness when we don't know how much deeper we will go before the light starts to return, or even if it will. The world has moments too. It understands us and lives as we do. The sun does start north again and the light comes back. In the world, in our lives, the light comes back. This is indeed something worth celebrating, and it has been celebrated throughout the Northern Hemisphere in remarkably similar ways. With the end of the longest night, the dark is defeated with the return of the sun, the return of light, hope, and promise. The goddess gives birth to the sun god. The sun begins to wax and the days grow longer. All that is hidden will begin to emerge. This is the sun's birthday, S-U-N. And it really is time to celebrate. The Holly King rules over the dark part of the year from midsummer to Yule. He is the god of the waning year. At Yule he surrenders his life to the young light oak king, god of the waxing year, and his twin who rules over the light part of the year from Yule to midsummer. Both rule for half of the year, both fight for the favor and love of the goddess, and both surrender their life force for the well-being of the land. In truth, they are one.
The spiritual meaning of winter solstice is celebrating the longest and darkest night is here, and the slow return of the sun is upon us. We look forward to the brighter and warmer days ahead. The Egyptians celebrated for the reappearance of Ra, the sun god, S-U-N. The Romans celebrated Saturnalia, honoring Saturn, the agricultural god, and the Old Norse celebration of Yule, which consisted of a 12-day feast. In fact, historically, many of the celebrations lasted several days, and in some cases, 12. Living in sync with the land and fully embracing the cold winter days, they rose and slept with the sun, which helped to preserve the supplies of candles, firewood, and oil. Burning a Yule log is believed to have originated in ancient Norse and Germanic winter celebrations. During this winter tradition, it was customary to toss a large log onto the hearth on the evening of the winter solstice to welcome the return of the sun each year. It was also the Druids who began the tradition of the Yule log. The Celts thought that the sun stood still for 12 days in the middle of winter, and during this time a log was lit to conquer the darkness, banish evil spirits, and bring luck for the coming year. As the year comes to an end and the new sun approaches us, take the blessings and go forth and shine your light in the world. Blessed be and namaste.
As Tiffany assists us, we will now put out all of our candles. Following the service, we will head outside to the fire pit to have our evening ritual. It would be much appreciated if you could exit the sanctuary from the back, in the back. Upon exiting and making your way to the fire pit, please remember to social distance and remember COVID restrictions still apply.
Gods and goddesses, eldest helpers of the Father, the strongest, wisest, brightest, pick up a bowl of incense and feather, hold high. O great ones, we honor thee with the sacred air. Remain within us as we remain within thee. Accept this offering of sacred incense as our gift to thee. Deities, leave our right.
Once again, we center and ground ourselves. Thank Mother and Father of the right. We thank Thee for Thy blessings, Thy love, and Thy gifts. We honor Thee and bid Thee peace. All say, we bid Thee peace. We bid Thee peace. Thank the kindreds, nature spirits. Pick up bowl of sacred soil and hold high. Spirits of the land, we thank Thee for Thy aid and blessings. We honor Thee and bid Thee go in peace. Okay.